So I want to take a minute to actually talk about the shop odds thing. I'm probably gonna do like a 10 to 15-minute discussion on it because I think it's actually worth actually bringing up since it seems to be a lot of people actually believe that this is real. So I actually have like some prepared talking points about this. Okay, so about 2 days ago, there was a tweet made by a North American player named Dehua, and he is a player that made Worlds last set. So that's kind of his claim to fame. But Dehua has actually had a really rough climb in TFT so far. He is like struggling to climb. I think he told me he was like hard stuck diamond for a while, like legitimately hard stuck, and he is not making progress in climbing. And so I think that in general, his climb has not gone very well. So I think that's important context because he also is sort of the originator of kind of pushing forward this conspiracy that shop odds in TFT are actually bugged. A lot of people actually think that currently in the middle of the set right now, that shop odds are actually borked and there's people experiencing generational low rolls, right? He's saying that there's something bugged in certain rerolls. He's getting generational low rolls this patch with different reroll lines, and I'm probably just super schizo. Someone help out the insane asylum, right? And then this ends up having a really interesting effect about confirmation bias because everyone who's low rolled is now coming out of the woodworks, and by the way, all of us have low rolled, and saying, wait, me too. So then this guy, Durson2K, says, I drop by this post and say, I totally agree. I rolled 150 gold for a single piece and it didn't show up. And then he's like now like saying, yeah, right? Isn't that crazy? I had back-to-back real games where I started with 60 gold and roll and just don't end with the unit I'm rolling for. I would love to see a clip of the roll down. Like he's just saying like, I want to share it. And then Kiyun's like, I'm also low rolling. Blade's like, I'm low rolling. Dumb says, I actually agree. I'm low rolling. Emily says, I'm low rolling, right? Everyone is like, yes, I agree. I'm low rolling. That's actually crazy. Marcel says, I have you with the anecdotal evidence. I feel the same. Some games you find infinite Shen Silver and 0 of your 1-2 costs. I send 20 Shens and 1 Recon when there were 10 Shens out and 2 Recons. And Marcel, by the way, is a highly educated. This is not just people complaining necessarily, right? It's one thing if it was just the usual suspects complaining, the TFT streamers, the people who are really toxic and negative. But Marcel is not only like a positive and reliable narrator, a very rare sight in TFT, he's also like very well educated. He was employed as like an AI engineer at Google. He was very well compensated. This guy's like very, very smart and capable. He wouldn't go out and say stuff like this is a statistical anomaly with the anecdotal evidence if it doesn't actually have real merit behind it, right? It's crazy that he can roll so much and the curve is deviating this much. Just to give you a reference of what you're looking at, this is a graph from the Meta TFT app that shows you the expected curve of how many recons you are expected to see if you hover over. And then there's the reality graph, right? The dotted line is the expected line. And the bold line is how many he actually saw. He rolled and he was supposed to see Recon 3 ages ago. And I'm guessing he was trying to look for like Recon 2, let alone Recon 3. He saw 1 the entire game, right? I had a game where I was playing where I was like, wait, did I miss Vi? I kind of needed Vi. I was playing a Juggernaut Ash game. I think it was it the game where I had Ash with Rageblade? Where was it? Give me a sec. I think it was this game. I was like, did I miss Vi? I mean, it says that I high rolled, by the way. I'm like, did I miss Vi? I didn't see a single Vi the entire game. Although, granted, there was more people playing Juggernauts in that lobby, but there's some like weird stuff happening, right? So everyone's reporting weird things happening right now. Mordog actually ended up replying to this and said, I've seen a lot of reports like this set. Normally, I'm pretty skeptical given how people perceive randomness. But given the volume of reports, we're trying to investigate this. So far, we haven't found any issues, though. What would really help is if you have any videos of the game where you feel like you experienced this, please send them my way. Maybe there's something we're missing. Any evidence can help us find it. Even that being said, even if we ultimately find nothing is wrong, that won't matter. It's clear that there's some improvements can be made to the experience and perception around it. And that part we're going to probably address in a little bit. But Riot basically has confirmed that they can't find any problem with the shops, but they are experiencing a high volume of reports. Like, you know, and that's Mortdog being very forward about it, which by the way, I think is a really good thing. You know, not to again glaze the TFT devs like overly hard all the time, but the reality is a lot of devs can actually just say get good, right? There's actually a League of Legends dev. I forgot his name, but there's a League of Legends dev right now that's like going around just like he's like answering and being very communicative, but he's also dunking on a lot of players who complain. And now these players are complaining about low rolling, and it's pretty easy for more to be like, we didn't found any issue. Have you tried like getting good? You know, have you tried consider that it's a skill issue, right? He could easily take like he easily score points and dunk on us. But I want to take a moment to just like say that it's great that they're saying like, hey, even if we can't find anything, maybe we should actually look at this, right? Because now the perception of TFT is that either Riot messed up the shop odds, Riot rigged the shop odds, or something happened with it. Because one of the prevailing theories that people are perpetuating right now is that nothing is wrong in the code, right? This is the image of Mortdog's pinned tweet from the stream this past weekend. The dev is Drew Levin. Thank you. Yes. Drew Levin. Which, by the way, I'm happy that they're getting more people communicating on League of Legends. I'm more than happy about that. So I'm not saying that guys shouldn't do that. I'm saying it's easy to feel like, yeah, whatever. Like, you know, gaslight them, disregard that, whatever. Gatekeep, game dev. Cool. In regards to unlucky rerolling, in quote, issues, the team has checked. There seems to be no issues in regards to shops or anything. They checked crew and monster trainer, and they're causing no issues as well. The actual question the team is looking into is why people perceive this so heavily this set. And a lot of people are saying it's probably like people are low rolling and experiencing such negativity. They're creating like reasons why in their head it's happening. They're saying, oh, the crew odds, the Lulu monster trainer are messing with odds and pools. Like they're just like people are literally coming up with like wild. It's like, is it because of the fact that crew odds don't change as you level? I mean, I don't even understand how that would work, but maybe like the idea is Riot's code has not been most reliable, and there's been a lot of chain reactions based off mechanics. Just to give you a little bit of insight onto, I don't know too much because I don't work at Riot. Just PSA, it might surprise you guys. I don't work at Riot. Some people actually still have that impression. But Riot actually borrows a lot of mechanics from previous sets. So if you remember the previous set in set 14, there was a trait called Syndicate. And the Syndicate was like a hat that you would equip onto a champion. But that's actually been like a mechanic. Like you take an item, you equip it to get a power up. That's been a mechanic in the set multiple times. We've had it like with the mech. You select the mech. We've had it with Dragonmancer, right? And as a result, there's been instances in all these like mechanic like rollover that there's just been a lot of bugs. Like a lot of things just break because there's new interactions. And quite frankly, if I was ever a coder, I'd be scared to ever look at TFT under the hood because I just feel like spaghetti wouldn't even begin to describe the level of probably chaotic jungle that you're going to wade through if you're like going through like the Riot client, which by the way, League of Legends is just not a great client in general. And then on top of it, you compound like dozens, hundreds, thousands of TFT interactions, which are like borrowed over time and iterated upon. So anyways, so the question becomes, are the shop odds rigged or bugged right now? Like, is it very likely that something has messed with the code, and now all of a sudden when you roll, you're unlikely to hit? Well, it turns out that this has actually sparked a ton of discussion. Every day there are posts about this all the time. And Mortdog has comments on it as well, and I want to like share a couple of things that I found when I was like going through it. The first is, I think that someone actually did an analyzation of their own game. Someone actually went through their own games and like did a bunch of nerd stuff. You don't have to read all this, but basically they did they took 100 games. They looked at their meta TFT stats and they calculated the average odds of what they hit and whether or not they did hit, and basically played 100 games and like spread it all out and laid it all out. I'm just going to read the summary of it because it's really nerdy stuff. I think these look quite normal. This is a bit noisiness due to lowish sample size, but otherwise the distributions are pretty even. So what does this realistic mean? To be frank, I did feel like I was low rolling a lot this set, even though statistically I don't seem to be. Could it be that the meta is where people roll naturally less, causing variance to be higher? And if the variance is higher, lows would feel a lot more pronounced. And I feel like we could be in a meta where rolling is less frequent, In set 14, we had a reroll portal to allow you to reroll more. Between that and other causes, it's possible that the other shop feels like it's having more low rolls, even if that's not necessarily the case. Anyways, he basically says that he did 100 game sample size and realized that he feels like he's low rolling, but he can't actually statistically prove that he is. And then the other thing that I want to bring up is that this has actually been an issue. If you actually just like type shop odds like into like the subreddit, it'll like be something that actually just comes up like a lot. People talk about odds are broken, right? Odds at this, and like if you actually just scroll through the history, everyone has been talking about this for a really, really long time. Mortdog made a post about shop distribution a year ago. He actually talked about shop odds a really, really long time ago. And it's a very, very in-depth thing where he ran an experiment on a bunch of different units at different costs and talked about like the probability about it and went through it. But I thought that there's a couple of snippets that I thought was really interesting. The first is that variance expands really dramatically, even if you play like 100 games, right? He took like games where he played 100 of them. We saw the previous ones, a small sample size, but variance is actually pretty funny because the way like math and statistics works, and this is not me like talking down to people like, oh, you don't understand math, you're so dumb, whatever. But the reality is you might flip a coin and it lands heads 8-10 times in a row. So you could be playing a composition 8 to 10 times and it lands on heads 8 times. And you feel like that's just crazy. I can't be like low rolling all the time, but you can, right? And that's what he talks about. Much like if you flip a coin 10 times and hits head 7 times, 70 is way higher than 50, but the reality is when the sample is lower, the variance is higher. And that's something a lot of people understand. I thought that was like all well and good, but one really interesting paragraph specifically from Mortdog is that he wrote something, he had insight into how other games do variance. He wrote, Nintendo games do a lot of funging behind the scenes that I've talked about before to try to make expected outcomes more likely to happen. Famously, one of the most basic versions of this is in Fire Emblem, where they double the roll odds. So if something says 75%, it's actually 87.5, so it feels like 75% to people. A 95% chance in Fire Emblem is much closer to 99%. And based on this, I feel like there's improvements we can and should make here so the game behaves closer to what you should expect it to do, even if it's within acceptable outcomes. And the conclusion was, Mortdog said, our shop odds are working good, right? Because this is offer for me to confirm. Good use of my time. I like challenging our game design if we can do better. Yada, 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 yada. And so what's actually happening here? I think a lot of people have like, I don't get it. I feel like it's what Dehua is saying. I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm like low rolling so much this set. And like my rational brain is saying that's just what happens in TFT, but it can't it feels like something is wrong. And now it's kind of becoming perpetuated in everyone's chat. Whenever people miss on a low roll, everyone's saying like bug shop, like you're just missing, right? I was watching Soju stream, I watched Wage and Iverson stream, and they're saying, oh my God, the bug is out to get me. And I think that it's weird because Riot hasn't found any evidence to suggest that that's the case. And people who are also doing their own analysis also can't find it, right? And then you have people reporting, for example, I rolled 50 gold on 4-2 at level 6 for uncontested Kaisa. Not only did it hit my 3-star, I didn't even see one, right? This is exactly the same thing that I just reported. So I want to talk about a couple of things here. Let's talk about the devil's advocate. Let's talk about the juicy part that sells. Let's talk about the juicy part that sells. Let's assume if you are a person that does not trust Riot, you have good reason to. Because believe it or not, Riot has actually gotten odds wrong before in a different capacity. One time, very famously, 8 months ago, this was during set 13, I believe, they accidentally shipped a patch where odds actually changed, but they didn't actually tell us. Or specifically, there was a mismatch of what the shop actually was supposed to be versus what they actually were. This actually happened like 8 months ago. So this could potentially be just an honest mistake, right? If you were to put a tinfoil hat, shop odds are bugged, it's probably not right. Maybe they just literally messed something up and actually shipped it. And the reason why that happened is because people are just saying WTF is going on. I think a writer explained in this comment section, but I hope I don't misquote them. But basically, the way it happened was there are multiple patches being deployed on different clients internally at Riot. And when they deployed this patch, it was built with like a previous thing from a long time ago that had different shop odds. And so no one caught that. And actually what happened was people had already been playing on it previously for a while, but we didn't even know until someone actually exposed it. And so they missed it because everyone missed it. And so now people are a little bit more alert to that situation. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe they created shop odds that were never mentioned. Now, if you want to go even deeper down the rabbit hole and just believe that Riot is nefariously twirling their mustache, stroking their cat, and sitting on their golden throne trying to, mess with a bunch of TFT players, there's also other instances in the past where there's been bugged things in the game and Riot has doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. It's just like, it's not bugged. It's not true. One instance that happened, again, in set 13, I'm just taking a recent example, is that there's an anomaly called Hive Mind, where Hive Mind says gain a copy of the first champion killed each player combat. It's kind of like the Augment Pilfer. And it didn't work. You actually didn't get the copy of the champion for a while. And everyone was like, is it bugged? But Mordog kept saying that it wasn't bugged, right? He has a clip saying Hive Mind's not bugged.
Hive Mind is not bugged. We looked into this. It's confusing, but it's not bugged. The reason it's confusing is because people assume it works like Pilfer, but Pilfer applies to your whole team. Hive Mind only applies to the unit, and so that unit has to get the killing blow. And so what happens is there's a bunch of fights where that unit doesn't get any killing blows, and then people are like, it's bugged. But it's not actually bugged.
Okay, so that was like what he said. And then I do believe that it actually was bugged, right? So then people feel like, okay, it's not that like you are trying to lie to us, but it feels like at times there's been interactions where you thought it was the case and it wasn't, and everyone's trying to tell you that there's something wrong here. It feels wrong. And I think that's where, if you were to believe that history in the past, it could be wrong now as well. So when Mordog and Riot says we haven't found anything, another element too that I think people are also drawn towards is that they also feel like Riot is not being transparent with how they investigated. But quite honestly, I don't know how that's possible for them to be like, here is like our code, please evaluate that, right? Like, I don't know how they can actually get the review that like the community peer review that everyone's asking for. It just sounds sort of like a Herculean task that's almost impossible. So, but at the same time, people are like, we cleared ourselves of, we've investigated ourselves and cleared ourselves of any wrongdoing, right? Type of thing, which a lot of people don't trust. So that's kind of like if you want to believe the conspiracy. However, I think what a lot of people fail to realize, I do want to bring up a couple other things to make you potentially exposed to your own bias. The first is that I do agree that low rolling does happen, but I find that a lot of people are just not really good at actually being reliable narrators of what happened in the game. There's a game that I played yesterday where I thought that I was in like the best position possible. I'm just gonna take one of my games where I've been generally climbing this patch, but there was a game I went 8th yesterday. I said, wow, I rolled like 70, 80 gold and I didn't find a single Yumi. And that's like a really, like, people love to say that, right? We saw that on the tweets. People are like, I rolled 150 gold. Did you actually roll 150 gold? So I want to show you a situation where I was like, my spot is pretty solid, right? I have 70 gold or 60 gold. It's Scuttle Puddle. I'm getting ready for this Yumi. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this just to show you guys, right? So like I feel fairly rich to like do the roll down. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm at 86 gold, which by the way calculates into it. Skip this ad real quick because Outplayed is super greedy. Okay, so first of all, a lot of people actually conflate. Like, they usually remember this number before they level, but because they roll, they don't actually know. So I want to actually count the gold. So in my head, I actually said something like I rolled 80 gold. That's not true. First of all, that's wrong. I'm playing a Yumi Battle Academy Prodigy line, so I can sell some of these units. I can sell 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 18, and you can even sell some of this stuff, right? You might play it for a turn or two, but I have like 18, 21, 26 gold that I can roll. So I'm at like the mid 60s. So first of all, it's not even as much gold as I thought it would be. So let's count how many times I roll. I rolled 1 time. I rolled 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. Ignore how slow this is. 8 times, 9 times. And I'm like, should I make Jinx 2 temporarily? No. 10 times, 11 times. And I'm done rolling. And my immediate reaction was, how did I roll 80 gold and find no Yuumi? Which is, obviously this is me just streaming and having a ton on my mind, but I also missed this turn. And then what ended up happening was I ended up losing this fight, and then I roll next turn, I find Yuumi, inevitably. I keep rolling, and I'm like, wow, this is like super low roll. And then I went back to my history of that game, where I ended up going 8th because, spoiler alert, it was not very good. And I said like, oh my God, my RNG score was so low because I hit so much later. But the reality is I actually didn't roll as much as I thought. And the reason why it was low roll was for other reasons as well, because I'm not hitting some of my core units like Rakan and Ezreal and whatnot. But that's partially because of the way everything panned out. But I think a lot of people are actually like misremembering and not actually being very thorough with like their report on that. If you actually go back and watch, I wasn't actually very likely because there's actually like, okay, when I say very likely, I was supposed to hit, but if you actually do the math, that's actually like well within expectation. If I roll 60 gold at level 8, and let's just be generous and say like 15 forecast out of the pool, I'm rolling at 4-1, which is not the case. It's actually more like something like this. And the number of copies already out, this is also another thing that people don't understand, is that sometimes there are people who are rolling down holding copies, but it's entirely possible that you could miss rolling, like if you're rolling like 60, 70, 80 gold. Now the thing is, I didn't actually roll 60 gold. I actually rolled 11, 12 times. I actually rolled 22 gold. Let's go ahead and say 12. I rolled 24 gold. I have a 74% chance to hit just 1 copy, but that doesn't mean 100%. And kind of what we talked about with Mortdog is that the math behind this is that a lot of people think 75 is like 90%. They the perception of it. They like 85 to 90. They feel like they should be, because 75 is literally like 87.5 in Fire Emblem because of perception. And that goes back to like the math thing, the statistics thing. And so a lot of people like misunderstand that. Now, again, I'm not saying you're not low rolling. I'm not saying like anything, but I feel like this has become TFT's version of loser's queue, or in Hearthstone. I come from Hearthstone, right? There was a match that like people were so convinced that Blizzard would match make you against another player based on what deck you had. Like if you had a Hunter deck and your hard counter was Warrior, Hunter's an aggressive deck, and you lose to a full defense deck like Warrior, they'd be like, if I queue up Hunter, I'm more likely to queue into Warrior. And then they'd be like, and if I queue up Warrior, I'm more likely to queue into Rogue. Rogue was like a combo deck that would like kill the defensive decks, because defensive decks stall out and you would like assemble the one-turn kill stuff. And they're like, oh my God, they're like manipulating so they can get like 50. I feel like it's just turned into like one giant conspiracy that's being perpetuated, because I think people are actually missing a lot of this. Now, and to add other factors into it, they're using things like this RNG score as confirmation bias, as like, oh yeah, like I low rolled for sure. And that's pretty much like the breakdown of it. This is, we don't actually have a conclusion. I don't actually have a conclusion. I have a bunch of links, right, that I wrote down. Like, yes, it's rigged, right? I got things before. I will say that one thing about this set is that missing is extremely punishing. So the bad feelings get emphasized. I actually think that that's very true, because this set, everything is like so concentrated in power that if you do miss, I think what people are really describing is that low rolling feels extra bad this set. I don't know if necessarily the shot odds are bugged, but low rolling and being behind and then just watching your whole team die to Akali nonsense, right? And not Akali, just like one star Akali, just like completely destroying your back line, or Volibear coming and smashing and everything with the 4 edgelord. Like, I think those bad feelings are especially pronounced when you combine it with like negativity / confirmation bias, and a bunch of people just getting in the room being like, I low rolled too. It's crazy, man. And it's because of power-ups and the way it concentrates power, right? Because if you have an Akali with the best power-up, with good augments, with perfect items, like how do you beat it if you're like playing a general tempo plan? Like let's say you're playing a very honest Star Guardian game and you have Jinx, you have Poppy 2, Jinx 1, and like you actually kind of high rolled your roll down because you actually hit some of your units on 4-2, but you just get wiped anyways because you just slammed anything to just get to level 8. I think there's a little bit of that also in play as well. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to talk about in chat. The podcast we're just supposed to start in a few minutes here, but I want to talk about it with you guys in case. Comparing this to Losers Queue is actually very clever. I mean, I just feel like there's the truth is always somewhere in the middle, right? I think that if Mortdog is saying and admitting that we're getting a high volume of reports, it's literally his words. We're getting a high volume of reports than we have in previous sets, right? We're trying to investigate it. Maybe there's something at play there. But is it like some crazy like conspiracy that this game you will not win? What was the Vi game? It was the Ashe game that I played, right? It was the Ashe game. This game you will not find Vi. You had the wrong seed. People are literally making up things like my account seed has the wrong shop odds, with seed being like the account number associated with your game. And so like, oh, this game, the RNG generator like skipped Vi. I guess you're never finding Vi in your shop. Yeah, I found 0 Vi's in my shop when I was playing 6 Juggernaut, but is that the case, or was it just bad luck? Was it just variance? And then here's another thing too. Dishsoap actually says, are they going to inflate more so you can't miss? I actually wrote down that there's like a little bit of dangers associated with like, yes, fix it, right? So people are like, okay, Mort, maybe nothing's there, but you should fix it. I have to say that TFT is at its worst when you can't miss, when it feels like you're guaranteed, and there's almost like no, the feeling of inevitability or the loss of mystery ends up making TFT actually a lot like very repetitive. TFT is not an interesting game when it's the same comps, hitting at the same cadence, slamming the same items, playing around the same win conditions and augments every game. That's actually a very boring version of TFT. And I actually think that's like a bad thing. So should we actually have, more bad luck protection? I wrote the novelty of actually reducing one trick. And then not only that, it actually incentivizes you to one trick, because then you kind of like negate the bad luck protection, because part of the downside of one tricking is that variance kicks your butt. But now actually that downside is gone, so it almost feels like you should just one trick if there's variance and bad luck protection. Of course, there's multiple ways they could pad that, but those are some of the questions we should be asking ourselves. Do we actually want to have bad luck protection in the way that you guys are asking for? And the anecdote I'll drop is I like to play some sports game for fun. I like to play like my career. One sports game I really like to play is Major League Baseball, the show, MLB, the show, and I play my player career. One time, I was so frustrated by the difficulty of it, I decided to lower it to the easiest level, and my batting average and my on-base percentage was like stupid. It was like 90% or 80%. And then it kind of got to this point where the game I couldn't actually go back to playing like the hard mode, because it just felt so good to get the dopamine drip of like, oh my God, every time I get to the bat, I like hit a home run. I'm just a beast. I'm scoring 100 home runs in a season. I'm like MVP 11 years in a row. But then I couldn't handle like going back and like actually just hitting like 20% of the time, like batting 200. It kind of broke the reward systems in my brain. And I think that there's a little bit of that song and dance that TFT is be mindful of. We have to be careful not to kind of reward people from avoiding the bad feelings, because then it might fundamentally change their relationship with the game, and it might actually kind of have big ramifications later on. Anyways, that's just my take on it for 20 minutes. If you guys have any other counterpoints, we can stop, or we can answer here. Otherwise, I'm going to stop and get ready for the podcast with this. So bring back the Draven patch. No, thank you. Very well said. Now go rank one with that big brain. Okay, I just need to stop clicking aura farming. I need to stop doing that. This is going to age terribly when Riot reveals that I have an unlucky seed account. Listen, I'm willing to walk it back and say I was wrong. I just want to like put out this, because it feels like everyone just wants to it almost feels like QAnon TFT is like developing. Like everyone's just like gathering in Discord channels, trying to like look over their shoulder of riots. Like people are like, yeah, you guys here, like, and it just feels like everyone's just like kind of going to the thieves den of rumor mills and trying to just like whisper like, oh my god, everything's just so unlucky, it's crazy, like riot this, riot that, like this company, man. And I feel like it's better to put out in the open and also to even hold Riot accountable as well. Like, you know, I say this not just to the fans and the viewers, but also to Riot. Like, we don't have 100% confidence that what you're saying is true. Like, I myself have felt it. I would say that I'm like 90% confident that you guys probably didn't find anything. But there's a seed in my doubt, and the problem with seeds is that they grow the longer they get watered. And so yeah. But the thing is, if you're right, how do you even like shoot it down? Like they can just keep saying we didn't find anything. Like what's it gonna take for them to convince people that it's not happening? Mortdog has also said shops are weird on his stream. Mort, that is not helping, man. That is not, maybe he thinks this is something like, who knows? Maybe we have an inside guy. Probability is often counterintuitive, and people have a lot of bias because of that. We often make false conclusions on low sample size, and discussion and conspiracy theories happens in every game like games. Yes, it's true. It happens everywhere. I come from card games. I will play more card games. I will play more strategy games. It's a bunch of conspiracy theory. But at the same time, it's a little bit fun to sometimes like have a little bit of cope, right? I had like a fun conspiracy theory in the past of like other bug interactions, and sometimes it just helps me mental reset and move on. Because in the end, the number one thing that we don't want to do in TFT is accept responsibility for our mistakes. That's just not what we do. If we do not want to acknowledge the fact that we suck at this game, that TFT is a really hard game, and we need something to blame. And if it's not gonna be RNG, then what's it gonna be? Us? Oh, right, the tone tailoring. Yes, there's been many conspiracies in TFT's lifespan. Yeah, and oh, by the way, if you guys feel like you're affected by this negativity, I see some people saying like I'm affected by some of this negativity in chat. Like honestly, I think you have to understand that people are not trying to inherently be negative. It's more that people are seeking validation. They want to seek validation, like some people. A lot of the people that I showed you, like their take, like Dayqual and all them, are actually very measured. Like, yeah, they can be emotional at times, but they're like very measured, intelligent, educated, capable, gainfully employed people. They're not just like losers on in their basement, like who are just being like internet. I mean, I don't know how to say it besides they're just not internet losers, like basement dwellers. Some of these people are like really rational about it, and they're just seeking validation. And that's the most important thing that we can do, which is sometimes maybe don't push back and just say like, yeah, man, that was shitty. You low rolled. I'm sorry about that. And maybe some empathy can really help you, because a lot of people are just immediately being like, yeah, you're bad. And people are so stupid. How can you be so unintelligent? You don't understand math, probabilities, statistics, the standard deviation and regression lines. R equals. And listen, if there's more updates about this conspiracy stuff, more than happy to do a part 2 of it if we find more evidence.